After we drop the invoice files into the Drive folder, it will trigger the automated workflow in N8N to process each invoice one by one. As it processes each one, it will extract the information we've specified and fill it into the spreadsheet. As you can see, it has already processed the first invoice. It has extracted information such as the date, the category, who sent the invoice description, the amount before VAT, and the VAT percentage, which in this case is 0. So, the total value of the invoice is the same as the value before VAT, and it has continued processing. The second one is also done, so it just processes sequentially, one by one, until it finishes all the files that I put into the Drive folder. So, when we add a new invoice file to this Drive folder, that's actually the main trigger. That means every time we drop a new file in here, it will be processed, pushed into N8N, and handled there. The first secondary trigger is through Gmail. Now, I'm going to do a test where I'll send an email from another one of my email addresses to this email, and this email will have an invoice attached. When we set up in Gmail so that this email is labeled as receipt, it will trigger the secondary trigger in N8N to automatically filter this email and extract all the information from it to push into our spreadsheet file. Alright, it has already extracted the data, everyone. You can see here that the sender has been correctly filtered as 11 labs and the amount is 22. The second secondary trigger is activated through Telegram, where we will have a bot on Telegram. We can drag and drop the invoice here, or we can take a photo of the invoice and send it here, and this bot will receive it. Finally, it will read the information from the invoice, extract the data, and then push it into the spreadsheet file. As you can see, it just finished processing very quickly and has already retrieved the invoice information from OpenRouter. Have you ever seen workflow automations like this, and like this before? Looks super complicated, right? These workflows have dozens, even hundreds of nodes connected to each other. The truth is, most of these workflows are mainly for demo purposes, while their actual practical value is a big question mark. Not to mention, the effort required to set up and update them is extremely complicated, sometimes even impossible. Just imagine, one day out of the blue, if a node suddenly stops working, debugging and updating it would definitely be a nightmare. Or even worse, if the person who originally built the workflow leaves the company, then there's a 99.9% chance this workflow can't be handed over or used anymore. Actually, this is a huge mistake that many people make when applying AI automation to their work. They focus too much on the technology and the solution, instead of the specific problem or business challenge. That means we get swept up by the newest, fanciest, and flashiest technologies, but forget to ask one core question. Okay, what exactly is the problem I want to solve here? Only after we've identified this problem should we look for answers to how we're going to solve it, and with what tools, not the other way around. From my experience, the most valuable AI automation workflows are often extremely simple, just a few steps, but the key is that they thoroughly solve a problem, are easy to debug, easy to update, easy to maintain, and easy to hand over. It's very important to remember that the value of an automation workflow doesn't lie in its complexity, but in the value of the problem it solves, and the amount of time it frees us from repetitive, boring tasks so we can focus our energy on more important work and create even more value. In the near future, I'll be sharing with you a series of use cases applying AI and automation to solve specific problems and bring real value to businesses. Previously, I've also made some videos about use cases like automated content creation. If you haven't watched them yet, you can look for my videos on content automation with deep research or content automation with human in the loop. So in today's video, I'm going to introduce to you an AI automation workflow that I consider super simple, but still extremely valuable. The problem it solves is tracking and entering invoice and receipt information for accounting purposes, or simply for monthly income and expense summaries. If you've ever had to do this kind of accounting work, you'll know just how manual, meticulous, and time-consuming it is. So this is the solution. The automation workflow I'm introducing today is called Auto Invoice OCR. This system can automatically read and extract information from invoices and receipts, then clean up the data and push it into a worksheet file. Depending on the amount of paperwork you have, this automation workflow can help you save 3 to 10 hours each month on accounting tasks. The accuracy is also very impressive. I estimate it to be around 90 to 95%. In this workflow, I'll be using my favorite AI automation tool, N8N, combined with Google's Gemini 2.5 Flash model. Because it's free but still delivers really solid results. So what are we waiting for? Let's get started right away. Today, I'm going to share with everyone one of my favorite automations that I also use in my daily life, which is Invoice OCR. For example, here I have an illustration like this. As you can see, from an invoice like this, we have to extract a lot of information, and we have dozens or even hundreds of invoices or receipts like that. Every month or every quarter, when I have to do accounting like this, it takes up a lot of time. That was until I built an automation workflow to handle this task. So, our input will be a set of invoices, and our output will be extracting those invoices and putting them into a very simple spreadsheet file with predefined columns. This is exactly the Auto Invoice OCR system that we'll be building in today's video. So, to put it simply, how does this Auto Invoice OCR system work? We'll have a folder on Drive, and this folder will store all our receipt and invoice files. We just need to drop all our receipts or invoices for the quarter or month into this folder, and those receipts will trigger an automated workflow in N8N to process each invoice in the Drive folder one by one. And for each invoice, it will extract the information that we require. After that, it will push that information into a Google Sheet file. And our final Google Sheet file will look like this. The fields in this template are the ones that are predefined for the OCR to extract. So it will have the invoice date, then category, which is the category of the invoice, then sender. Description is the description of that invoice. Amount is the invoice amount before VAT, and VAT percentage is how much. Total means the value of the invoice before VAT plus VAT, which gives the final total. And besides that, we also have currency, which is the foreign currency of that invoice. Because our invoices are mixed with many different currencies, there's also another field called Note, in case there are any notes about this invoice. And finally, there's a field for the file name of the PDF invoice file. After we drop the invoice files into the Drive folder, it will trigger the automated workflow in N8N to process each invoice one by one. As it processes, it will extract the information we specified and fill it into the spreadsheet, row by row. Let's wait a bit for it to start processing the invoice. Alright, as you can see, it has already processed the first invoice and extracted information like the date, the category, who sent the invoice, and the description of that invoice. This description is in Finnish, but it could be in English, Vietnamese, or any other language as well. Then there's the amount, the value before VAT, and what the VAT percentage is. Since the VAT percentage here is 0, the total value of the invoice is the same as the value before VAT. And it has already finished processing the second as well, so it just keeps processing one by one sequentially until it's done with all the files put into the Drive folder. So, when we add a new invoice file to this Drive folder, that's actually the main trigger. That means every time we drop a new file in here, it will be processed, pushed into N8N, and handled there. So this is the main trigger. The special thing about my Auto Invoice OCR flow is that it also has two additional secondary triggers. The first secondary trigger is via Gmail, and the second one is via Telegram. With the first secondary trigger, it's through Gmail. The way this Gmail secondary trigger works is that whenever a new email is sent to our inbox, and that email has a label like receipt or any keyword you define, it will automatically extract the attachment from that email and push it into a Drive folder to trigger the automation flow as just described. From there, it will be able to extract the information from that receipt. Now, I'm going to do a test by sending an email from another one of my email addresses to this email. And this email will have an invoice attached. When we set up in Gmail so that this email is labeled as receipt, it will trigger the subactivation in N8N to automatically filter this email and extract all the information inside to push it into our spreadsheet file. Now I'll wait a bit for it to activate in N8N. Currently, I have it set to check Gmail every minute, and if there's a new email labeled as receipt, it will process that email. It will extract the invoice file from the email and push it into the Drive folder. Then from there, it will extract that file and put the information into the spreadsheet for us. So let's wait a bit for it to extract the information from that receipt, and it will show up here. Alright, it's already extracted it, guys. As you can see here, the sender has been correctly filtered as 11 labs, and the amount is 22. But actually, this one got a 50% discount, so there's a bit of confusion here. If we go back to this email and I open it for you to see, we can see that there are indeed 2 items. The first one is no, that's correct. The second one is priced at $22. But actually, this one also has a 50% discount, so its total is only $11. There, so you can see that in cases like this, if our OCR hasn't accounted for these scenarios, it will return results that aren't as accurate as we want. This can be fixed as well. We just need to handle it in the prompt so that it knows when these situations occur. It will automatically know which information to take. Anyway, this is also an example to show you that this OCR is very convenient, but it can still make mistakes, so we need to double check. After it automatically extracts the information into a spreadsheet file like this for us, we still need to check it again to make sure everything is accurate. Anyway, just the part where it extracts the information already helps us save a lot of time, right guys? So that's the first auxiliary extraction, which is extracting information via Gmail. Specifically, when there's an email that's labeled with a tag, for example receipt, it will automatically extract the invoice file from that email. Activating through email like this is really convenient, especially for electronic invoices that we receive every month, like phone bills or payments for some AI tool, every month. They'll just be sent to our email from a certain sender, right? So we just need to filter out those emails and automatically set their label as receipt. Then these emails will automatically be added to our drive, which saves us a lot of time. That's the first secondary trigger. The second secondary trigger is activation through Telegram. Personally, I still use Telegram and I find it very convenient. And where I am, Telegram isn't blocked, so I can use it freely. Anyway, how does the secondary trigger via Telegram work? So we'll have a bot on Telegram, and we can drag and drop invoices here, or we can take a photo of the invoice and send it here. This bot will receive it and push it into the workflow on N8N that we set up to trigger. Similarly, it will also push that invoice into our Drive folder, so the invoice will be indirectly uploaded to this Drive folder. Once it's in this Drive folder, it will trigger the main workflow on our N8N, and in the end, the information from that invoice will be read. And it extracts the information and pushes it into the spreadsheet file. As you can see, it just finished processing very quickly and has already retrieved the invoice information from OpenRouter, and the amount on this invoice is $10.9. So, the second auxiliary trigger on Telegram here is really convenient. For example, when we go out to buy coffee, pay for a Grab ride, or purchase something and they give us a paper invoice, we can quickly use our phone, open the Telegram app, and take a photo of that invoice. We send it to this chatbot, and it will automatically save all those invoices and process them automatically. Then, in the end, it extracts the data to save it into our final spreadsheet file. Here, I'm just using Telegram as an example, but in reality, we can build these auxiliary triggers with any chat application that we commonly use. For me, Telegram is the most convenient, so I just use it on Telegram. But for you, of course, you can totally set up these auxiliary triggers wherever is most convenient for you, as long as all these triggers eventually lead to the Drive folder on Google Drive. That means it will automatically extract the invoice file and save it into this Drive folder, which will then trigger a series of automated actions and processes that we've set up in advance. In the end, it will extract exactly the information we need and automatically save it into a single master file, making it easy for us to check and summarize every month or quarter. So that's exactly what the Auto Invoice OCR is, and that's what I want to introduce to you in today's video. What do you think? Doesn't it seem kind of magical? To sum up, the Auto Invoice OCR system I'm introducing has one main trigger and two secondary triggers. Our main trigger will be a Drive folder. Whenever we drag and drop new invoices into it, they'll be processed, extracted, and pushed to this spreadsheet file. The first secondary trigger is Gmail. Whenever we receive an email with an attached invoice and we label it as receipts, it will automatically filter out these emails, extract the data, and also save it to the Google Sheet. The second secondary trigger is Telegram. Here, we just need to send a photo or file of the invoices to a bot on Telegram, and it will automatically process and extract the information, then finally push it into our spreadsheet file. Okay, so I've already prepared a few slides here. With this Auto Invoice OCR system, the tech stack I'm using will be N8N, which is my favorite workflow automation tool. For the OCR API part, I'll be handling it with the Gemini API. I'm using the Gemini API for free, and its free quota is actually quite generous. And of course, this isn't the only option. Besides Gemini API, you can absolutely use other AI APIs as well. For example, a model that's quite well known for OCR processing is the Mistral API, which a lot of people talk about, so that's also an alternative to the Gemini API. To briefly explain a bit of theory about OCR, OCR stands for Optical Character Recognition, which is the process of converting an image containing text information into a machine-readable text format. Here, I found a pretty easy-to-understand illustration. So here, we have an invoice file, right? It can contain a lot of information, maybe images, maybe a PDF file, and it has a lot of text-formatted information. For example, here we have the invoice number, which is the invoice's serial number, the invoice issue date, the sender's name, the recipient's name, and line items, which are the items listed on the invoice. The total, meaning the total value of the invoice, whether it includes VAT or not, how much the VAT is, and what the final total is. So there's a lot of information like this. Basically, Invoice OCR is just one use case. It's an application of OCR that allows us to extract information from image files. After extracting the information from these image files, we'll reformat it into the desired structure. Structured data, you know. For example, here we want to process invoices to extract information for accounting and finance purposes, so there will be certain details we need in the spreadsheet file I just showed you. So basically, it'll look like this. After extracting the information from the invoice, there will be a lot of data, right? These details will then be sent to the AI LLM model, and this LLM model will process the text information again to extract only the specific details we need. For example, in our use case here, since we're dealing with invoice information, we'll need details like the invoice date, item list, sender, invoice value before VAT, VAT percentage, and the total invoice value including VAT. So these are the details in the spreadsheet file that I already showed you. So after we have the structured data, the next step is very simple. It just pushes this structured data into a database or a spreadsheet file with rows and columns that we've already defined, so it just matches and aligns accordingly. So this information goes into this column, that information goes into that column, and the process sequentially handles all the invoices so that, in the end, it automatically generates a basic accounting declaration for us, completely automatically. Okay, next, here I have a slide about the standout features of my Auto Invoice OCR system. The first special feature is the use of OCR technology. Here, it uses an API, specifically Google's Gemini API, to recognize and extract data from invoices and receipts with relatively high accuracy. Secondly, activation. We can trigger the automated workflow in multiple ways. There are 3 ways here. The main way is to automatically process files on Google Drive. The first secondary trigger is to automatically detect and process attachments in Gmail with a specific label. And the second secondary trigger is to process images sent via Telegram chatbot. The third special feature of this is that it's completely automatic, so it eliminates time-consuming tasks like manual data entry, and it can automatically extract data from those invoice files. It could be dozens or even hundreds of invoices, which would take a lot of time to reformat, but it automatically pushes the data into a Google Sheets file. The fourth point is actually a result of the third one. Once we automate things, we save time and reduce the errors that often happen when we have to do manual work. This means minimizing errors, not completely eliminating 100% of them, okay? As you just saw, whether it's OCR recognition or the automated data extraction process, it still can't guarantee 100% accuracy. There will still be cases where it might not recognize the information correctly, or it might interpret the data differently from what we want. Basically, it automates our workflow and helps us save a lot of time. But we still need to do the step of checking. For example, in the past, you might have spent 3 or 4 hours each month just on the accounting invoice declaration part. Now, you might only need about 10 or so minutes to do a final check. So that's already saving a lot of time, right? If you save a few hours, like 3 hours a month, then in a quarter you're saving 9 or 10 hours. In a year, you're saving dozens of hours. We can use that time to focus on more important tasks. Next, number 5 is structured output. I've already explained this, which means the data will be returned in a JSON format, making it much easier for us to integrate and use in the next steps. Sixth and last is flexible and customizable, meaning it's very flexible and highly customizable. With this system, I've designed it so that it's easy to modify and can be tailored to meet users' needs. We can change this form, modify the categories, the fields we want to extract, and even add or remove triggers if we want. For example, if the default template at the beginning doesn't fully match your needs, you can completely customize this template file. You can add a few columns here, delete some columns there, and then just make a few adjustments in this N8N file. Just edit this form file. So this is the form file. Whatever information we want to extract, we just edit it here. Next, I'll explain a bit about the logic of this flow. I notice that when people build automation flows, they often get caught up in the technical stuff, the little details. But actually, what's important, as I mentioned right in my very first N8N video, I already talked about this topic. The very first step before you jump in and do anything in N8N is that you need to grasp the logic of that automation flow. What exactly is its process? What are the steps involved? Which step happens first? Which comes after? And which action will trigger the next chain of actions? That's what we call mapping. Here, I have a pretty simple diagram to simplify the logic of this auto OCR invoice system. So it's really straightforward. The main trigger is when we save invoice files into a folder on Google Drive. These files will be processed and have their information extracted using OCR technology by sending them to an AI model via an API call. From there, the AI model will extract the information and return structured data according to our definition and requirements. That means instead of returning all the information, it will filter out only the fields that we need and want. After that, it will push those fields into a Google Sheets file. That's basically all the logic behind this OCR system. In this diagram, I've just added 2 additional trigger flows. The first additional trigger flow is when we receive invoices in our email with a predefined label, for example, receipt. This system will also automatically filter those emails, extract the attachment file, and then continue to save it into a Drive folder. From there, it will go through the same steps as above to extract the information and finally push it into the Google Sheets file. The second additional trigger is sending a file via Telegram, which works the same way. The file will be pushed to a folder on Google Drive. And from there, it also goes through each step in the main trigger flow so that, in the end, the extracted information is saved into the Google Sheets file. So this is the entire logic of the auto invoice OCR system. Okay, on the next slide, I have a few important notes about this auto invoice OCR system, not just for my system, but applicable to all AI systems or automated workflows shared online, especially those that use APIs, call APIs to LLMs, or large language models, or interact with AI models in general. First is data accuracy, which means the accuracy of the data. Not sure if everyone remembers, but AI often makes mistakes and can still have errors. As we just saw in the demo, AI can be smart, but it can never be absolutely accurate. There's always a chance that AI will make mistakes or errors. That's why we always have to check the data processed by AI, or in this case, the information extracted from invoice files into Google Sheets. This automated workflow already does a lot of work and has helped us save a lot of time, but the final checking step still needs a human touch. You still need to come in and double-check everything. You need to cross-check once more to see if the information extracted is accurate. If anything is not accurate, you should correct it. You can't rely 100% on AI. Never depend 100% on AI. The second important note is data privacy, which means the privacy of your data. You always need to be aware that all the data from your documents, including personal data or even sensitive and confidential information, will be sent to some third-party API for processing in your auto-invoice OCR system. In this case, it will be Google's Gemini API. So always be aware of the risk that when you use an API, you are sending your data to some other party. Of course, these parties may promise that they won't do anything and that they won't use your data, but there's really no guarantee about that. In fact, in the terms and conditions of these companies, they even state that any data sent to the API can be used by them completely free of charge. Next, the third point is about API usage, which refers to the level of API usage. In this case, it's the Gemini API, but as I mentioned, there are many other APIs you can use. Among them, you can check out and test Mistral AI. I've seen quite a few people praise Mistral OCR as well. Anyway, this template of mine is tied to the Gemini API, and Google is very generous. They provide it to us for free. But of course, even when something is free, there's always a price to pay. Free services come with certain limitations, like rate limits when calling the API, usage policies, or even potential costs if we use too much or exceed a certain threshold. Then we might get charged. So these are things you really need to pay close attention to. If we mistakenly think it's free and keep testing without care, then at the start or end of the month, we might suddenly get a bill for hundreds of thousands, hundreds of dollars, or even thousands of dollars. At that point, all you can do is cry. Okay, so in this video, I've introduced you to an auto-invoice OCR system. This system will automatically extract information from your invoices and push that data into a database, which in this case is a spreadsheet file, so you can quickly and easily review everything. I've also explained to you about OCR, how this workflow operates, the logic behind this auto-invoice OCR system, as well as important notes regarding the accuracy of this data and the privacy and security of this data. These are very important things that all of us need to remember when using AI tools to avoid leaking sensitive or confidential information. I hope you've learned something from this video of mine. If you find this video valuable, please give me a like and leave a comment below to let me know. Alright, this turned out to be a pretty long video. If you're still here watching up to this point, thank you so much. See you in the next video. Bye-bye.